Hello and welcome everybody to New Earth Consciousness. Tanya here with Mistress Mia Payne. I want to welcome her to the show. I'm super excited about this conversation because this is a topic that I have never had the opportunity to interview anyone about. And just to get into it, so Mia is a dominatrix and she specializes in BDSM therapy. You can find her at painwithpurpose.com. The links will be in the comments below. Pain spelled Payne, her last name. You can also find her on Instagram and TikTok as Mistress Payne, Payne. And welcome to the show. Thank you for being here, Mia.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. I enjoyed our initial conversation. Before we get further, I just want to correct one thing. So it's
Yeah.
on TikTok, it's at Mistress Mia Payne. And then
Oh, okay.
and Instagram, it's Call Me Mistress Mia because it was already taken.
Oh,
So
shoot. Okay, well, I got that
just
all
to
wrong.
correct it so people can find me. It's all good. It's
Yes.
all good.
Well, it'll be in the comments below. So
No problem.
anyway, excellent. Yeah, we had a very for me it was a very energizing I don't know what the word was. It was electric, the talk that
Oh,
you and I
good.
had.
Yeah, it
For
was
me
informative.
personally, yeah, because the world of BDSM is nothing that I don't know anything about.
Mhm.
I definitely have curiosity about it. I've seen some posts on Facebook, people tied in ropes and things like that, and it's really quite interesting. I
Mm.
know some people that do that. And when you and I talked, we were talking about shame and, desire, and I'd love for you to just kind of share like well, first of all, what drew you to this work and why do you feel it's important?
Okay, so I was drawn to this work because I've always been a healer and moving in light work. So I did a lot of body work, I did a lot of energy work for many years. I just found that sometimes it was difficult to access the parts that they were hidden away, underneath nice language or, yoga clothing. People were carrying so much weight. And so I wanted to understand what it meant to do shadow work, but I also didn't want to get sort of embroiled in the shadows myself. And so I wanted to do something that kind of danced between the two. So I like to say that I do shadow work, but in the light. So I was drawn to it because I want people to feel released and free and especially from shame. Um, and what was the other question? What
Yeah,
it's like to do this work?
yeah, well, you've kind of touched on a little bit. Yeah, why do you think it's important?
Oh, why it's important. Well, because I think that there is a missing component to a lot of what we call therapy or self work. And that is being witnessed by somebody with whom you do not have to have secrets. So I advocate for therapy. I think it's a beautiful and necessary tool for a lot of people. There is, however, parts of us that nobody shares with a therapist. And there are parts where people, even that are not comfortable sort of exposing the harder things to a therapist. So they'll go and they'll talk about their week or they'll bring up something that they can kind of process more easily with a therapist. But when we're talking about desires that are maybe not mainstream or people don't think are mainstream, because that's actually a misnomer, but
Mm.
um, those kinds of things can become for us like a shame point. Think of it like something that attracts to itself negativity, right? So if we carry this secret that we feel shameful about, it will attract to itself other things and it becomes a bigger ball, right? Um, so for me, I find it important because it does two things. One, it gets past the niceties because when you're standing in your underwear in front of somebody you don't know very well,
Mhm.
vulnerability is automatic.
Right,
and
right.
and second of all, it is, I think, really amazing how it can activate fascia. So I do a lot of sensory play. Sometimes that includes pain and sometimes it does not. But activating the fascia through those kinds of activities is a very powerful way to bring up feelings and bring up trauma so it can be addressed in a safe and consensual way. I think that it's important too because we tend to be, most of our society is very shame forward. So,
Mm.
this is considered sex work, even though I do nothing sexual in any of my sessions, it is considered sex work. And so it automatically comes with sort of a stigma. When I tell people what I do, it's always like, ooh, and they imagine like somebody in leather and like with a
Right.
whip and they're right, and
Yeah, I was
they're
going to
mean,
ask you,
like
what are some of the
have no mercy.
misconceptions? What are the
Yeah, okay.
misconceptions around what, yeah, what you
Yeah,
do?
that's one of them is that
Yeah.
all mistresses are, dressed in leather all the time. They're wielding some kind of an instrument, that they're not merciful, that they demand everything from you and they give nothing. And I feel like the movies have not helped. I mean, I've been excited to see that more conversation is happening, but there is so much misunderstanding about what that looks like. 80% of the time, I'm not in a particular outfit when I am working because I am a dominant female. I don't need to put on a costume. And people who come to me are happy to submit to me because I offer to them safety, like a constant check-in about consent. I have lots of education and experience, so they trust me to take care of them. I don't need to impress them with the way I
Mm.
wear whatever. Although there are some nice outfits and I do enjoy
Yeah.
it, but it's not something I have to do, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is that there's always a sexual component. That is a big misnomer. The work that I do does not include that. It's not a judgment I have. Sex work is real work. And if that's something that somebody's doing, I honor that. But it's just not what I do. And I think the third one would be that all mistresses are in it for the money.
Mm.
Money is a natural byproduct of a skill, a talent, the ability to move somebody from a stuck place to a free place. I think that should be kind of an energy exchange using money. But I don't extort money. I don't, like, if somebody comes to me needing my care and we can work out a reasonable compromise because they can't necessarily pay my rate, I will do that because I'm here to assist them. That is my primary goal, is to
Mm.
assist them. And I don't, my goal is to not have them as clients for very long. I want them to come to me, to work with me, to be really in depth with me, to do the hard stuff, and then to move on to something that will advance them further, right? Like, my intention is not to just keep them like on the book. So I'm constantly generating revenue. That's
Right.
not,
And so there's for you, the focus is healing. It's not just, I'm just thinking of what some
yeah.
people might, yeah, again, just misconceive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know if that's typical of the whole industry, but at least
No.
for you specifically, it's like for you, the intent is healing. It's not entertainment. It's not to get your yayas. It's not that.
Right. So I'd like to also say that that is true. However,
Huh?
sometimes joy is healing. So sometimes coming into session just to be playful and
Right.
to
Is
be a puppy
is
for
what you
45
need.
minutes
Right. That's
is
what you
that
need.
that can be. Yeah. So if they are like, I need a space to decompress, I work a very high powered job, I just want to have a lighthearted exchange, that's also healing in its own way. So it doesn't have to always be like super deep trauma or whatever. It can
Yeah.
just be holding space for playful adult behavior, right?
Well, that's it.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's interesting though, because there can be shame tied around play, for sure,
100%. Because
right?
you look silly.
To be silly,
Like,
like just to
yeah.
let go of your role as this, that, or the other thing and to let yourself
Yes.
go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
good stuff.
So, and the other misconception I would say is not really about the BDSM community, but more about pain. So we have somehow moved ourselves through evolution and into a place where we view pain as something we should avoid. We think of it as something negative in our life when actually it's a catalyst for growth, because
Mm.
you don't grow without some kind of discomfort, and pain is really just discomfort turned up a little bit, right? And so for me, I look at pain when people come to me and they say, I'm struggling with anxiety, I'm struggling with depression, I'm craving some kind of physical experience that will give me a little bit of like an endorphin release. pain is a thing. That's why people, scare themselves by jumping out of airplanes, or they eat
Mm.
like hot peppers till they throw up, or they run marathons until they pass out, right?
Yeah,
These are all painful, and like those of us who do not want to jump out of an airplane think that that might be a little crazy. But for them, that is the thing that lights them up, right? And so
right.
coming to me can be a fearful experience, can
Yeah,
also provide very high intensity of sensation, which often registers as pain, but doesn't always. And so it's an opportunity for them to have that dopamine, neurochemical cascade that gives us that floaty high feeling.
yeah,
And for some people, especially those who are self-harming, who have addiction tendencies, going to a mistress who is well versed in these things, and if you do it routinely, it can become the thing that is not necessarily an addiction, because the mistress should know how to keep that in check, but
mhm,
it can provide for you the things you normally get out of feeding that desire, right?
yeah,
So there's so many ways that this tool set can be used. And I love what I do. I do it in person, but I also do it online. I some people can't come to me physically, so we do self-development work through submission. And we do that through an app I've created, which helps to walk people through self-development things, and like tasks and punishments and rewards. And there's like a dopamine payoff for that, right? So I can do that virtually. It's not my favorite way to interact with
yeah.
people.
That's
I really like to have
interesting.
them in
That was the,
person.
do you
Yeah,
find that more challenging?
I do,
Yeah,
because I'm very intuitive and I like to feel people's energy and kind of work with that in session. So it can be a little bit harder. The good part of that is that it's ideal for people who have no space or finances to be able to afford an actual session. It's
yeah,
very minimal fee. They still get attention from a dominant for, a period of time each day. And for those who are trying to accomplish a particular personal goal, or who want to just feel what it feels like to be in submission to somebody, it's a great way to experience that without a lot of risk, right? There's not a lot of financial risk. There's
mhm,
really no risk of your family finding out. So it is a little bit easier for people to kind of move into the space.
yeah. Interesting. So so people that come to you, what are they asking for? Like, what are some of the things, or this maybe just give us some examples of the, I don't know, how wide is the spectrum in terms of,
Sure.
yeah, why people come?
So some people come to me asking to participate in service. So they'll come and spend an hour, hour and a half in service to me. And what that looks like is foot rubs, shoulder rubs, doing my dishes, cleaning my floors, taking my laundry to the laundromat. Um, and those people tend to be submissive by nature and usually unappreciated in their life. So they come to me because when they are doing a good job, I tell them so. And so
Interesting.
they receive instant feedback and appreciation for simple menial chores.
Hmm.
And it does help me because I am busy, building an empire. And so I need a little,
Uh-huh.
like, take some of those things off my hands, right? So I'm grateful, genuinely grateful for their help. And they're grateful for having time at my feet, of being looked down upon in a loving, kind of way, and sort of overseeing them in a protective way. They feel good in that space. And then other people are like, I want to experience something that I can look back on and hold as like a memory of something I accomplished. So we'll do a rite of passage work. So we design a scene that is going to push them to the very end of their limits. Um, Something that frightens them, usually something that they're not sure they can accomplish. And
Hmm.
then I walk with them through that rite of passage, um, and out through the other side. And what happens with that is they feel a boost in self-confidence. They have a special secret that they share with themselves and with me, and they're just like, I did this thing, and they feel really like amazingly like creative and cool. It gives them like a
Uh-huh.
boost.
Uh-huh.
um and our society really doesn't, we don't have rites of passage anymore, so this is a really interesting way for them to accomplish that. Some people come to me because they just want someone to provide for them, almost like administration, so administer pain. And so they'll say, I just want 45 minutes of some kind of sensation experience, and I would like it to include, painful experiences. That requires some negotiation. I do a lot of paperwork with all of my intakes. There's lots to explore and make sure that I'm working in a way that is ethical, that they are consensual, that they are participating actively in the process of creation. I don't do things to people unless they have requested I do. So that's like a whole other conversation. But yeah, so wide gamut. I do puppy play. So I have people come in puppy masks and they'll be my pet for, a few hours and walk them around on a leash, and I train them and I feed them in a dog bowl, and they have a space to just play act. They're just in like childhood play mode, right? It's a very innocent, very playful space.
Mhm.
Um, I've also done some regression work. I only do that with very specific clients. Um, if they've had a mother wound, that is like traumatic still or problematic in their life, I can provide for them an opportunity to experience nurturing in a safe and imagination space. So they'll get dressed in some cute little PJs, and they'll have like a stuffy, little snuggle stuffy, and I give them a juice box, and then I read them some stories, and I tenderly brush their hair, and we talk about their day, and we just have a moment where it's almost mothering
Mhm.
the people
Mhm.
who have not been properly mothered. And
Yeah.
in that space they often break down, because
Yeah.
they realize the grief of not having had that as a child.
Yeah.
And then we can process it and bring them up to speed, help them reparent themselves, help them
Right.
to understand what their littles need, their inside littles need. So there's a lot of work that I
Yeah, there's
do
a
that's
lot.
a variety. Yeah.
Yeah. And that sounds to me like it's not just, playing out fantasy for the sake of being in a fantasy. It's
Mm-hmm.
definitely coming back to the integration part of like, oh, okay, yeah. So, you know, coming full
Yeah.
circle, not just hanging out in the fantasy. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
fascinating. And also too, I'm curious with the rites of passage. I mean, yeah, I mean there are none in our culture. I mean, maybe graduating from high school and going to your,
Yeah.
a grad night or something. That's probably about it. Maybe getting married.
Yeah.
Other than that, not much else. So do you find that people coming to you to, um, somebody that's well into adulthood coming to you to ask for, I want a rite of passage into manhood or womanhood. I didn't get that,
Mm-hmm.
when I was 15 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what that looks like is not usually that they know how to verbalize that. So they
Oh,
don't usually approach me and say, "Hey, I didn't
mm,
get a rite of passage. I'd like one." Usually
yeah.
what that looks like is, "Hey, I'm stuck. My career's not moving. My relationship at home
Mm,
feels very stale. I
mm,
don't love who I have become, and I don't know how to change anything. Like I'm stuck."
yeah.
And we talk about how what they're looking for is a transformation moment.
Mm,
And so that transformation moment can be done in a few ways. And one of those ways is a rite of passage where you come from a stuck place and you push yourself through something that is very challenging, so that on the other side of it, you have transformed. You cannot do this kind of work without
yeah.
transforming in some way.
Yeah.
So out the other side, you can see things from a different perspective and feel confident to make changes.
What are some of the examples of the challenges?
Oh.
Can you share or too much?
So I'll give you one.
Mhm.
Some of them I think are too graphic for your audience.
Yeah.
Um, but one of them would be, for example, I had somebody come to me who was deathly afraid of needles, um, that just couldn't even be in the same room with an open needle.
Mm,
And so there was no real trauma behind it. It was just something that they had decided was scary,
yeah.
basically their subconscious. Um, so I do needling and I do artwork using these needles. And it's really quite beautiful and very relaxing for both parties.
Mm,
But this person, the thought of one needle was a lot. So we did titration for about 4 weeks, where we started with one needle and then two needles And we
Mm,
got up to like 5 needles, and then we paused so that he could process all of that and see where he had come. And then we designed um, a passage that would involve like 30 needles. And he would stay still for that whole process. It would be start to finish, there would be no stopping.
yeah.
Um, and so he like laid down, and I did like an S curve, not near his spine, but an S curve on his back, and with 30 needles.
Yeah.
And then I took a picture of it at the end. And when we removed the needles and I did his aftercare, I showed him the photo, and
Mm,
he was so dang proud of himself. He was like, I cannot believe I did that. This is amazing, right? Like, and
yeah.
so it doesn't always have to be super painful, but scary, like frightening. Overcoming that fear is a big part of a rite of
Yeah.
passage.
Yeah. It's interesting to me how pain is definitely something we avoid, but then we can, I mean, all the raves around like ice baths, for example. Like that's a
Yeah.
perfect example of like something
Like,
you
who thinks
nobody
that's comfortable?
yeah, nobody wants to do that, get in a cold
Uh-uh.
river or whatever. And it's painful at first, but then it's like, okay, you pushing through the other side, and then there, of course, there's just like, yes, I did it. Well, I think
Right.
it has something to do with the will of realizing like
Mm.
my willpower is my own, and I can move past any kind of
Yeah, you've got
barrier,
it.
right?
Exactly.
So,
When we realize that we are the ones standing in our own way, it changes everything, because we stop becoming victims of other people's willingness to see our ability or capability or talents or whatever. And we start realizing that the circumstances we think are the problem are actually not the problem, because we have all of the choice. We have all of the power. It's ourselves that get in the way. And so learning how to trust ourselves, trust our instincts, believe in our ability and our strength, it's a huge change. And you were talking about the ice baths. Ice baths actually help to calm the nervous system. So people often come through ice bath rituals and they feel like really peaceful, like just centered and beautiful.
mhm,
And that's the same experience that people have after a dose of pain at the hands of somebody who knows what they're doing.
right.
You can't just do it randomly. You have to really work with a skilled practitioner. But that same nervous system settling can happen using certain rhythms in the work that I do.
Interesting. Yeah, super interesting. So we talked in our little pre-interview chat, we talked about, well, one, you shared with me that you were in a Christian cult growing up, correct?
I
Yeah.
was, yes.
And how there's, obviously, power dynamics are very much at play in a cult. And obviously in BDSM, there's also the same dynamic, but it seems to me different. Or can you maybe discuss that? Because we talked about that, and my experience in, for example, being in an ashram with the spiritual
Mm,
teacher, and people are supposed to submit to the feet of the guru, and all of that,
mm,
and how that can be a slippery, very, very slippery slope where,
yeah,
you really lose a sense of yourself. And I'm just curious if you could talk about that.
sure. So even backing up from the Christian cult, let's just
Mhm.
talk about religion in general,
Yeah.
because religion in general has so many visuals in all the texts. This concept of like worshiping, the concept of giving up all of our worldly possessions in order to follow this leader, you know, the concept of like, punish me for I have sinned, tell me the horrible things I have to do to gain your forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
All of these kind of images are everywhere in religious texts. And we don't think about it because we think that one is a deity and one is a human. But what is really the difference if one is a deity and one is a human, or they're both human? And
Mm,
so for me, the difference 100% is consent and intention. So if you are at the feet of a guru and he says to you, do you wish to be at my feet?
Mm.
and you have no consequences for saying no, then that is a healthy choice you can make for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So in BDSM, consent should be regularly checked in with, it should be ongoing, it should be encouraged that you can take back consent for anything at any point without any reason. And so even if people say yes and a list of things with me, if in the moment it doesn't feel good for them or they're nervous about a particular tool, I celebrate when they set boundaries and they say no to something, because that means that they are actively participating, that we are working together, and that they're advocating for themselves. But in a religious way or situation, it can become more focused on the power of the head person, which would be equal
Mm-hmm.
to the dominant. But in BDSM, it's the submissive that has all of the power, because without their consent, there is no exchange.
Right.
So it's a different way. One is reciprocal, that's reciprocal energy, and the other is taking from.
Right.
And I think that's the difference. And I'm
Yeah.
talking clearly about healthy BDSM relationships. There are unhealthy ones, just like there, just in
Right.
like in vanilla relationships, there's good and bad.
Yeah.
So knowing what that looks like is important as well.
Yeah. Do you provide like a guide as far as like, here's what you should look for? Like the checklist, oftentimes
Yeah.
when I remember, I was going through my Reiki training and my teacher
Mm-hmm.
said, these are the things you should ask a healer. Like, you know, do you drink? Do you do drugs? Like all
Yeah,
these things that
100%.
you should know first before, because not everybody says who they say they are is necessarily true. So I mean, what are some of the things that people should ask maybe out there? Is there like
Sure.
a questionnaire?
So I actually did have just finished a series on my TikTok channel where I went through each thing that you should do when you're looking to vet a dominant, if you're looking to come into the community. Some of those things include asking for references. You can ask a dominant for references, and if they cannot provide any or they will not provide them, that is a red flag.
Hmm.
You should look, most people who are in the community are on a website called FetLife, and FetLife profiles are they're full of lots of very important information, because on FetLife, everything you do on that website is listed in your like um, activity page. So you can go and look and see what people have been doing on the site so that you can get a feel for if they're real, if they're not, what they're looking for, if they're kind of sporadic and not, they don't like stay in one kind of
Mm.
mindset. It gives you an idea of who they are without having to ask a bunch of questions. So I always recommend that people go to their FetLife profile. Um, Never work with somebody who is money first. So I always require a deposit, but we do a vetting where if they show up to the vetting, so they make a deposit, we meet up for the vetting, whether that's in person or on Zoom. Um, and then if they book with me, that money gets taken off the first session.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way to encourage people not to book my time and not show up, but they don't lose money for vetting if they sign on.
Mm.
Um, but there are a lot of, but it's like $100. It's not a great deal of risk. There
Yeah.
are a lot of mistresses who will say, who are not good actors, they will say, you know, I would like $500 upfront. And then they'll say, also send me pictures of yourself naked, right? And so never send nudes online. That
Uh-huh.
that is an absolute no, not until you have established a relationship.
Mm.
When I'm working with a new submissive, all of the things I ask them to do are underwear at least, and until we have established a really lengthy rapport, I don't ever ask anything risky of
Mm.
them
Mhm.
online,
Mhm.
because it's there forever, and I don't want them to feel like they've made a choice that they'll regret later. So asking for nudes up front is really bad. And I think too, it's important to know their history. Like, you want to know that they have some kind of training, that they have some kind of mentor, that they haven't just like self-taught and then that's as far as it went. I
Mm.
mean, a lot of people get into it self-taught, but if you don't believe in what you're doing enough to invest in honing your skills and becoming educated, then you're probably not really a professional. You're just trying to get money for
Well, it would
no
seem to
input.
me that, yeah, that being trauma informed would be a
Yeah.
very important part of it, right? Because
If they're in the healing space, yeah.
yeah, if they're in the healing space, yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Can you tell the audience or share with me for you, what have you noticed for yourself, you know, getting into this work, from one end to the other, what
Mm,
kind of transformations did you discover for yourself?
mm.
Yeah.
So I really learned how beautiful it can be to hold space for somebody else. I also gathered a lot more self-confidence
Mhm.
because people are looking to me to know what I'm doing. And so yeah, you gotta just do it sometimes, right? And so I've become more self-confident. Communication is so important, and communication about really difficult topics is necessary and a regular part of what I do. And so I'm an excellent communicator. I don't shy away from conflict or difficult conversations. It's just part of the day for me. Um, and so I think that those are really important. I've also lost a lot of the shame that I carried as a born
Mhm.
again fundamentalist Christian. The shame that came with that designation, it was incapacitating. And
Yeah.
so shedding that has been a really beautiful and transformative experience for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely feels like a just a return to wholeness. And to me, my feeling is that your work really helps people come into their authenticity, their
Oh
authentic
yeah.
self. Yeah.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
really, I feel like that's really all anybody really wants, ultimately, is we want ourselves. I mean, we think that we want love or money or, all these
Mm,
external things, but the reality is we just want to be in touch with our own soul and our own expression of who we
mm.
are.
I
But
do.
yeah.
I agree with that, but I also think we want to be witnessed.
That's
So
a
I think we need a
point.
witness to our life, and sometimes we can't be our authentic selves with our partners because our partners have decided who we are,
Yeah.
and moving past and through that kind of box that they've created for us can be really difficult. And so having somebody outside of your central circle who doesn't have you already defined for themselves,
That's
where
very
you can
interesting.
define
Yeah.
yourself, is can be really helpful too. Yeah.
Yeah. That is super fascinating. It's true. I never really stopped to think about that. How even with close friends, family member, like whoever that you love and adore,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to have their own, everybody's got their own little view of who you are. And to enter into a
Yeah.
space where like all bets are off, and
Mm-hmm.
this person that's standing in front of you is like, give it to me. I
Who do
don't
you want to
care.
be?
What is it?
Yeah.
I don't,
Tell
I'm,
me who you are.
yeah, I'm not gonna
I
judge.
joke around. I joke around a lot that when I die, my funeral is going to be very entertaining because there's going to be people from the Christian life that I lived who saw me very conservatively, and
Yeah,
people from like the artistic community who saw me as an artist, and then people in the like
yeah.
BDSM community. They'd be like, I don't know who this person was. Who was this person? Because I am all of that, but everybody has one kind of view that they see you at, in or through.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a very interesting. You should come to my funeral because it's going to be fun.
It's gonna be a parade.
It's going to be a party.
Yeah, so funny. So, on your website, I noticed that you have a lot of different services. What are what are is there like a grouping of them that are more common that people book with you? Well, let's just say somebody
Yeah.
wanted to check you out, we're curious, they don't really know what they're doing. What would you tell them as a place to start?
So I always start with the same, which is we do an intro, we do a vetting. So we would have a conversation either by Zoom or in person. That's always the first thing. I get a feel for the person. I decide whether I think I'm a good fit for what they're looking for. Um, and then the first session, based on whatever came out in that vetting, depending what they want, the session could be very, very different. But I always, if they're there for impact, so if they're there for any kind of sensation play,
Mm,
I always start with an introduction to all of the tools I have. So they get one strike from each of the items and they register it for me. Is it a 1 to a 10 scale, right? So that I understand how their body sees that particular sensation. And do they like it? Do they enjoy that sensation? Or do they think that that's not something they want to continue
mhm,
trying? That helps me to understand their nervous system and their body so I know how to proceed with any other further sensation play. We might do training. So if they're there to learn protocol, then I may start with their protocol training. So protocol is like very specific manners, very specific ways of dressing, how to position themselves in a room if I'm in it, how to properly kneel, all of the different, there's like, I think 8 or 10 positions that I teach, so that I don't have to communicate with long sentences. I can just say, like table, and then they'll turn themselves into a table. So I can use them for my tea or whatever, right? Like,
mhm,
so I don't have to say, could you please get on your all fours and make your back really straight? I can just say table and they know what I
uh-huh,
mean.
uh-huh,
So that's a protocol training. Like there's different things it could be. So it really depends on the person. Because I mix life coaching with what I do a lot, sometimes the first couple of sessions don't involve play, especially with couples. So if couples come to me looking for support in setting up or kind of fine tuning their kink connection,
mhm,
usually the problem with the connection is found in the vanilla connection. So we have to work on that before we can move into adding kink to the mix.
mhm.
And so some of it, what I do doesn't involve kink. And it can come later as the next step.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, this has been really illuminating. I feel like, I remember speaking with a friend who she's gone through, Kundalini awakening and really talks about, we're always so focused, mostly, I guess in spiritual communities, it's always about focusing on the light. And we can't really come into wholeness until you're also acknowledging the dark, because otherwise
So true.
that well, to me it just seems like it's a bind. You're not realizing your whole self, and anytime there's fear towards the dark, that's where it's kind of like, well, that's where the treasure is what I feel.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I like to look at it like, have you ever taken a photograph and then put it in like an editor and you've turned up the highlight or
Mm.
you've turned off the shadow?
Oh,
It
right,
makes the picture really flat, right? It's just like it doesn't look the same. There's something missing if you do one or the other. So
right.
you have to have both in appropriate balance in order for the beautiful colors to show and the depth of the experience of the photo to be present. So I like to think of it like everybody has shadows, even if they don't think they do, because there is no light without shadow. You shine a light on anything, there is a shadow. It is a natural part of being human. Um, and if you learn to embrace your shadow and create space for it to be welcome without without allowing for it to negatively affect other people,
Hmm.
then you can really enrich your life, enrich the people around you too, because once we fully accept ourselves, we drop judgment toward other people, so
Right.
then they feel fully accepted and it's a rippling out effect. So I
Yeah.
think it's a really important part of our human experience.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Mia, this has been a really Wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for just showing up and sharing your passion with us. Really, I can see that that you have definitely coming from a heart of service and just you love what you do and you care about people. And is there anything more you'd like to share with the audience before we sign off?
This has been a fantastic interview. We've covered a lot of topics, and I feel like we've given them a good picture of what it is I do. They're always welcome to reach out to me with questions. I welcome them. So if they have any questions, they can absolutely reach out.
That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And everyone, please like, share, and subscribe this video, and we'll see you again next time. All right. Bye for now.